NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. This is Brian Fonseca. Pat Lenny is here with me as well. And later on in the show, we will be reaching out across the pond to our Paris correspondent, Steve Politi, to chat about Rutgers Olympic hopefuls in Paris over the next month or so. But first, we got to catch up from our day in Indianapolis at Big Ten Media Day for Rutgers. They were one of the teams on the first day of the annual media event, and Greg Schiano, Kyle Monangai, Tyrone Powell, and Mohamed Touré all got to talk about the season ahead of them, expectations, how things are looking heading into training camp. And we got a lot out of that, a lot on our site, NJ.com/Rutgers, and a lot coming in the coming days before the start of training camp next week. Pat, what were your takeaways from our day in Indiana talking to the Rutgers guys?
I thought it was a really buzzworthy 24 hours in Indianapolis. I thought there were a lot of great quotes, a lot of great questions for Rutgers. And I think the general sense of the media that is that Rutgers really is an underrated team. People are taking notice of that. And they're kind of a popular pick as like a sleeper, a team no one's really talking about. Obviously, any sports writer and analyst likes to be ahead of these things. And I think it's becoming a really in vogue to get on the Rutgers bandwagon right now ahead of this season, because people are looking at the schedule, looking at the returners, and they're putting everything together that Rutgers could surprise some people. So I think that's a narrative that's been out there for a little while, certainly on our site and from our reports and things like that. But it was just interesting to see it from reporters across the country and on TV and things like that. So I think that was great for if you're a Rutgers fan. And I thought there were some great quotes from Schiano and the players. I thought the one that really stood out, and of course it went kind of viral on social media, was when Schiano said, "I didn't come out of retirement to go to a bowl game. I came out to win a championship." He said that, I think, after the Pinstripe Bowl. He obviously said he wants to win a championship in his introductory press conference. It's nothing new, but it caught a big reaction. I think it's just remarkable and powerful to hear. So, as a reminder that, right, finishing 7-6 is great. It was a great step for the program, but it's not the end goal. Rutgers is still here to win a championship, and I think that's exactly what you want to hear if you're a fan.
100%. And I think all the guys kind of reiterated that as well, that yes, last year the breakthrough bowl game was good, but it's not what they came here for. And that's not why a lot of them decided to come back for another year and pursue that next step. Couldn't really get any of the guys or Greg to say exactly what that next step is, which again is understandable, hard to really quantify. No one's going to say, yeah, I think we're going to try to go 8-4, maybe 9-3 this year. But I think it's clear that they think there is a next step to be taken, and they think that they can improve on last year, this year. And like you said, a lot of it has to do with the schedule. You talk about guys viewing Rutgers as a dark horse. As you mentioned, we are, as always, ahead of the curve on this kind of thing. But Jake Butt made some waves on Big Ten Network saying that he thought Rutgers was the most underrated team in the Big Ten. He said Kyle Monangai was maybe the most underrated running back in the Big Ten. I caught up with him afterwards, and he kind of just reiterated a lot of the people view Rutgers as the old Rutgers. And this isn't the old Rutgers, and Kyle Monangai kind of spoke about that in his podium session, but this is an improved Rutgers team. This is a team with a lot of depth, a lot of veteran leadership, with Greg Schiano, who Jake Butt put a lot of trust in, a lot of value in having him as the coach. And the schedule, it's the lightest schedule in the Big Ten. They don't play any of the top 5 teams in the preseason poll. We even talked about that. Rutgers landed at 9th in the poll. They don't play numbers 1 through 5. So as Jake Butt said, and I agree with him, the stars are kind of aligned for Rutgers for this to be a special season. Now you got to kind of go out and do it, and you got to hope that things fall in your way, injury luck falls your way, which it sounds like, based on our conversation with Greg Schiano, everyone is healthy heading into training camp. You spoke to Tyrone Powell. I guess that was one of the big questions going into media day. How is he feeling, and where does he stand entering training camp and his status for the start of the season?
Yeah, Tyrone says he's feeling great. Obviously, he's still working through a lot of rehab, but I was surprised to hear him say that he's on the practice field, running around, doing positional drills. That seemed to be a little bit ahead of schedule, at least in my mind. Obviously, I've never been through an Achilles injury or anything like that, but I listened to a lot of Aaron Rodgers talk about his Achilles injury and the timeline of that. So again, I think no one's going to put a date on anything. Start of the season, Powell's not going to return to the field until he's 100%, and he shouldn't. So, but all indications are that he's doing great. He's kept his spirit high throughout this whole process. And for the first time, he talked about the injury, how it happened, those kind of things. So you could definitely read about it if you want. But yeah, I thought he was a great representative in Indianapolis. Everyone loved talking about his podcast with Robert Longerbeam, and he's a great personality, a great interviewee. So I enjoyed talking to him a lot. All the guys I thought were great. So, but he was certainly a highlight. And yeah, I just thought it was a great trip. And some news came out of it too. Obviously, Shiano talked about the practice facility is not his number one priority in raising money right now. And a couple other things that we've written the last couple of days. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the practice facility had been a bit of a topic between fans in the past few months. People are wondering when that will start. That was obviously a major priority for Shiano when he got hired. And last year, he kind of tempered things a little bit, saying that it was no longer the top priority because of NIL. But at the time, he was saying that kind of they go hand in hand, NIL and the facility. You can't focus on one and hurt the other. But this year, it does really sound like NIL is priority number 1, 2, and 3. And the facility is taking a back burner. Essentially, Greg said if someone wants to cut a big check for the facility, he won't say no. But most of his eggs are really in the NIL basket, which makes sense, and it makes sense why Rutgers brought back a lot of guys from last year's team, and it makes sense why they have a pretty strong recruiting class at this moment. I think he had a great quote in saying that if you don't get the players and you don't have success on the field, that practice facility that gets built is going to be for somebody else. And I think that's a totally fair point for him to make. And I generally agree with the philosophy that NIL should be the priority these days. We chatted him with a bunch of other things you had this morning. His thoughts on the NCAA's rule change to allow analysts to go on the field and practice and help out and actually give instruction, which they weren't allowed to do until this June. They have a lot of interesting guys on staff. You mentioned John Perry in your story, NFL wide receivers coach. You mentioned Bob Frazier, who's been coaching linebackers for forever, longer than both of us have been alive. And they have a lot of interesting young guys as well that maybe we don't know about, but they view as rising stars in the coaching profession. So I thought his thoughts on that were pretty interesting. And he talked about position battles. I thought that was kind of revealing of him to mention wide receiver. We talk a lot about kind of the depth they have there, but it seems like they still have to sort out the pecking order. He talked about offensive line having a couple spots, and he talked about tight end, saying Kenny is a bit as the lead, but there will still be some competition there with guys behind him. So was there anything else that he said that, whether it's those things I mentioned or anything else he said that kind of stuck out to you from media day?
We asked about if Rutgers would ever consider giving up a home game to maybe play at the Meadowlands for a bigger crowd, or a neutral site game. If you wanted to play at a huge venue or something, like go to make that Ireland trip if they ever got the opportunity. And his answer was basically that we will only do it if it makes sense financially and there's a financial windfall from it. So it sounds like obviously they want to keep their games at SHI Stadium. It's become an experience. He even talked about the crowd being a big factor in games. It's a tough place to play. So they don't want to give that up. And I think obviously that all makes sense. What was your favorite? You listened to a lot of coaches speak. Deshaun Foster yesterday had the freeze up. It was not a great introduction for him as the coach at UCLA. What was one coach who stood out to you?
I like Brett Bielema only because these guys have 15 minutes on stage and essentially they could talk for as long as they want. And he filibustered for 12 straight minutes, got one question, his time came up, and he acted surprised as though his intention wasn't to just filibuster the whole time. I like that a lot. I talked to Brett about Art Sikowski, who is a rising star in the coaching profession on his staff, and he had a lot of good things to say. We'll have that story on our site at some point in the coming days. So I guess from that aspect, I liked Brett too. But thankfully, while we were there was no UCLA moment, because I'm not a fan of watching cringy things. It makes me uncomfortable. So I'm glad we were able to avoid that, because I when we're sitting there, I'm looking up at the stage and I'm wondering, like, I would be terrified of talking to all these people. Never mind, a home audience of hundreds of thousands of people. So I commend the coaches for doing that. I know they're paid to, but still, it's hard to imagine they don't get a little bit of stage fright.
I know I get stage fright on this podcast, and it's just you and us on Zoom. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Anything else about what the players said? Anything else about what Shiano said, or anything else about media days that stood out from things that we haven't discussed yet?
Yeah, I thought Kyle Magnanga's podiums, he got asked about is the college football playoff a realistic, does Rutgers have a realistic chance to make the college football playoff? And like I said, Kyle's very articulate, thinks about what he's saying, his words matter to him. He's great from that aspect, and he took some time and he said anything's possible. The end result is going to be from the work we put in. And that's exactly what he said last year too, talking about his breakout season. And it was just, I'm going to work and everything at the end will kind of fall into place. So that was a great answer. And just shows that there are some expectations, whether they're realistic, a dream, whatever. It was interesting to hear his answer on that.
Yep. They emphasize the fact there are no limits. They don't want to put limits on themselves, and saying whether they can and can't do something does that. So, I mean, fair enough. It's a good way to think about things. I think Kyle, I was looking at the numbers from last year, has a chance of really cementing himself as kind of a program great, program legend if he has another year like last year and does lead Rutgers to that next step. He had his 1,262 yards last year, was tied for the fourth most in a single season at Rutgers in program history, with J.J. Jennings, who was a great running back in the 70s. So if he can duplicate that again, and I don't know if he'll ever reach the Ray Rice numbers. Ray Rice's numbers are head and shoulders above everyone else, but he can certainly, stick himself in that area as one of the other next tier of great running backs at Rutgers. And I think he understands that opportunity in front of him. I have nothing else on the players, but we have to do this as an obligation as journalists to talk about our pilgrimage to St. Elmo's. We had the famous cocktails and we had a great steak dinner. Was it as good for you as it was for me? Because that is my favorite meal of the year every year, and it did not disappoint.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's get your reservations if you ever go to Indianapolis. It's so worth it. And obviously the Rutgers players and Coach Shiano went there as well. So it's always interesting to hear what the players' reaction is to the shrimp cocktail, because it is this alarming, all fire burning sensation that lights up your sinuses, and it's super spicy, unbelievable from the horseradish. But there have been some hilarious Rutgers reactions to it over the years for players who have not tried it before, or even people just having it for the first time. Apparently, it was a pretty low-key reaction this year because the Rutgers players knew it was coming, but there were still some laughs about it. So I'm sure there'll be a couple of videos popping up throughout the week.
Botere did not like it very much. He made a very clear face that it was very powerful. So I don't know if he'll be coming back if he's in Indianapolis anytime soon. But it's a love-hate feeling. You forget what it's like, and you have your first bite, and then you feel it through your nostrils, in the back of your head, in your brain.
While we're talking about the shrimp cocktail, let's pull back the curtain a little bit. We're running through the airport to make our flight. We flew out right after Rutgers stopped talking at Lucas Oil Stadium, flew to the airport, hopped on our flight. But in the 15 minutes we had before we boarded, Fonseca was at the gift shop buying extra bottles of the shrimp cocktail sauce to bring back to Jersey. So that just shows you how much it really means to him.
I buy it every year. This year, I bought all 3 bottles they had. I would have bought 10 if they had them, to be honest with you. But I'm glad you brought this up because normally plane delays are the bane of our existence, but we were blessed somehow because we were sitting there at Lucas Oil Stadium. Our plan was to leave from there to the airport and take a flight to Charlotte and a flight to New York, which is a pain in the butt. But our flight to Charlotte gets delayed for an hour, which makes the connection impossible. We're scrambling to figure out what we're going to do. There's a direct flight to LaGuardia in an hour. It's 4:55. The flight leaves at 6:19, and we are at Lucas Oil Stadium. We decide to make a run for it, and we're sprinting over. We take an Uber. We sprint to the terminal. We get through security, and we somehow make it. And as boring as that travel story might be for you guys, it was absolutely thrilling to live through it together. And I'm glad we're here, because if not, we would have been sleeping in the Charlotte airport for 12 hours, and it would have been miserable.
All right, speaking of boring travel stories, we're now going to kick it to the world famous, and I emphasize world famous, Steve Politi, who is joining us from Paris, France, while he's covering the Olympics. A true honor for us to have Steve Politi back on the Rutgers Rant.
And now we take it to our correspondent in Paris, Steve Politi, who has had enough baguettes and croissants to make all of us very jealous. Steve, how was France and Europe and not having to deal with us for a week so far?
I mean, it's not Indianapolis, fellas. I would much rather be with you. As much as no, you know what? As much as I like the shrimp cocktail, I got to tell you, I'm gonna go with the baguettes for a while. A change of pace, little mixing it up. The food here is fantastic. The transportation is fantastic. City's fantastic. No complaints. And believe me, sports writers at a big event can complain about anything. But if you're complaining about your free trip to Paris, you're just an asshole. So no, it's been good so far. Competition starts, opening ceremony tomorrow, and then finally we get some Olympics on Saturday. So I can't wait.
I bet you're excited. A lot of people were comparing Indianapolis to Paris, calling it the Paris of the Midwest. So I think
Paris.
we're all, yes, I heard of that a lot actually. So I think we're all kind of in the same boat here, enjoying our free
Yes.
trips all over the world.
No giant floating ducks down the Seine here, unlike Indianapolis though. So we didn't have that, fortunately.
Yes,
But
you saw it from.
there'll be some things floating down the river here, and not just E. coli tomorrow night.
So you'll be covering a bunch of things over in Paris for us, a lot of New Jersey athletes, but we only care about Rutgers people in this neck of the woods. Tell us, what's the top Rutgers story or anything Rutgers that you're looking forward to watching in the next couple weeks over there in Paris?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is tomorrow night. I mean, if you're turning on the Olympics to watch for American athletes and New Jersey athletes and Rutgers athletes, you're going to see Sebastian Rivera leading. He's going to be the flag bearer, one of the two flag bearers, the male flag bearer for Puerto Rico. I think they go like the 150th in alphabetical order of the 200 nations. So in the Parade of Nations, he'll be on a boat with a flag. I talked to him about it. He's really excited. I'm like, so how did you get this gig? And he's like, no one was more surprised than I was. So he did not expect this. This is just a great honor. The Wrestling Federation for Puerto Rico put his name in, and it was chosen. So yeah, he got a text a few weeks ago, found out, celebrated with his family, and was really jazzed about it. So he'll be in front of the boat, waving the flag. I asked him if he knew anything else about it. He has no idea what it's going to mean. But I mean, obviously, this is unlike any opening ceremony in Olympic history, having it someplace other than a stadium. And it'll be the first time that, it's funny. It's actually like a concern for a lot of athletes. They don't want to participate in the opening ceremony because they don't want to stand up and walk for 4 hours. That's what it becomes. You get there, there's 10,000 of you, no place to sit. Like you wonder why Katie Ledecky is not the flag bearer for Team USA. So she's not going. She's got to swim the next day. So, but Rivera is a different situation. Obviously, he doesn't compete till the very end of the Olympics. So this was kind of a cool deal for him.
Really interesting connection too, Steve. I'm curious, when you talked to Sebastian Rivera, if you pressed him if he's interviewing for the Open Rutgers Wrestling assistant coach position. He's been a popular name thrown around in the circles that he may be on the staff. I'm curious if you pressed him on that.
Yeah, that's a swing and a miss by me on that one, Pat. Thanks for pointing it out. No, I didn't ask. I don't think he would have given me a straight answer. In fairness to him, he's poured his life into this for 2 years. I mean, it's been kind of since winning since getting the spot and getting chosen for the Puerto Rican team, and he talked about making the adjustment from college to freestyle wrestling, which wasn't easy. But no, I didn't ask him. But yeah, I mean, you'd have to think that that's going to be the next step in his career, right? Like, if he's 25 now, I guess he could keep competing, but even then, you could coach and compete. I mean, that's what
he even said at the World Championships when he got second last summer that he wants to be on the Rutgers coaching staff. And I think the stars are aligning here. Everything's kind of working out. But like you said, he's got a singular focus here. Olympic opportunity comes once in a lifetime. And I know even the Rutgers people, Coach Goodell, even Donnie Pritzloff, the guy he may be replacing, has been helping him train and doing all these things for Rivera as well. So everyone's got tunnel vision on a gold medal for Rivera.
Yeah, absolutely. I know he spent the entire time in the Rutgers wrestling room. I guess that's very interesting. He said he was wrestling against, and I don't have their names in front of me, but a couple of Russian wrestlers who would have qualified for the Olympics. But Russia, if you're not following international news, they've been in a bit of a kerfuffle, Russia, with lots of many things. The whole invasion of Ukraine thing, and cheating their balls off at the last couple of Olympics. They are country non grata here. So these guys are not competing. So I guess he was training against those guys to get ready for this. He says he's in great shape. He is, this is funny. Like, he's winning the Olympics already, because when you get here a week before the Olympics and then don't compete until the last weekend, I mean, it's like a full month in Paris to, like, you know, just freaking hang out. I mean, good for him. Dude's winning.
You can
no
imagine.
question.
You can imagine it's a little tough not to partake in all the fun in Paris while you're trying to keep your focus on the wrestling. I think that might be a little bit of a mental
Well, I
battle
mean,
too, right?
you can't give, he doesn't compete till August 9th. You can't have a little fun now. I mean, come on. It's July 25th. He's 25.
Yeah,
Come
it's
on.
crazy.
I think
The one of the guys that was in the Rutgers dressing room was Zorbek Sidakov, huge name in wrestling, Olympic gold medalist at the
that's,
Tokyo.
yeah.
And it's funny. Rutgers heavyweight Yaroslav Akuski, who's Belarusian, was actually served as the translator for the whole session. So he was
Ah,
kind of working through everything. It was great, from everything that people have told me about it. So yeah, that was like 2 weeks ago. A big highlight,
as,
having him in the room, obviously.
as always, you know more about this than I do. You should be here, Pat. Get on a plane and cover this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was one of the first people to have to cover Sydney McLaughlin before she was legendary,
That's
with
true.
crazy too. So
You've even
she'll
got
obviously
that.
be the biggest story in New Jersey as well.
You've got the track angle. Do you know a little about gymnastics? You can fake your way through that. You can do this.
That's my biggest glaring omission on my resume for sure.
There isn't everybody's here, so don't worry about that.
Steve, I don't think we've talked about this on the podcast, but you had a great story with Casey Murphy, obviously women's soccer goalkeeper, Rutgers legend. She's now on the women's soccer team in Team USA at the Olympics, and her now husband, Chris Mirabelli, who was a standout track athlete at Rutgers and had Olympic goals. And obviously those weren't met, and you had a great story about their relationship. If you can just tell the folks about that, the reporting process, and just kind of what you learned talking to those two.
Yeah, what I love about that story, but two things. The first thing is it's just incredible that, for that generation of Rutgers athletes, there's no bigger female athlete than Casey Murphy, and no, you can make an argument. I guess the wrestlers at the time, Ashnall, I mean, but very few bigger male athletes than Chris. And the fact that they would become a couple is just great. And their story, the relationship origin story, is such a good one too. Like, he challenged her to a soccer shootout with the winner would have to buy the other dinner. I mean, that's a ballsy. I mean, that's a play. I mean, that's not quite, asking for Taylor Swift's. That's not like Travis Kelce asking for Taylor Swift's number, but it's pretty good, right? I mean, that's like you gotta be pretty sure of your game to do that. And he shows up at the field with decked head to toe in USA garb with a speaker on his shoulder, blaring the Rocky theme, thinking he's gonna knock her off her game. And she's already out there practicing, doing her like slide saves and dives. I mean, she's like a monster in goal. And so of course, he saw her. And he's like, "Oh my God, I'm dead." Then she won the shootout. They went to dinner. They've been dating. They dated throughout college. They've been together ever since. Yeah, and I mean, what's cool about that story to me is, like, we only write about the people who make the Olympics. I mean, seriously, but the reality of it is that the vast majority of people do not, who try to make the Olympics, don't get there. And Chris is in the 1% of that 1% of people who came close and didn't get there. He probably, if the pandemic didn't come when it did, he probably would have qualified. He was right at the cusp of he was third in the country, right at the cusp of having a qualifying throw. He was confident he would have gotten there. And after that, got injured and dealt with injury problems, and, essentially to the point where, like, his arm was going to fall off. The doctors made it pretty clear you can have another surgery, go another 18 months, but even then you might not be able to get back to where you were. And he just knew the writing was on the wall. He had to give it up, and he became Casey's, consigliere, essentially. Runs her camps, runs her programs, handles travel, and is just a sounding board for her. I mean, she's an elite athlete. To have another elite athlete that she can talk to about this stuff, it's great. So I just love that story because both of them are Rutgers stars, and just Chris was really honest about having to cope with that, and kind of get through that to embrace what he's going to experience now, which is sitting in an Olympic stadium, watching someone else enjoy what he thought would be his dream. So yeah, I really love that story.
Good, Pat, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I love the details in that story. It was fantastic. You really, really knocked it out of the park. I love the detail, if you can remember it still, how you described Casey Murphy's wedding dress for their ceremony. You had it to like the designer, the neckline. I was like, this guy is on his game in Paris.
They
He
stole
might
that
get a
from People
job over
magazine.
there.
Yeah.
Some designer might pull him in.
Could go there. Yeah, I mean, fashion is a big deal here in Paris.
I know.
Come on, you can't
That's why I said it. That's
you
why
can't
I
just say
said
wedding
it.
dress, man.
Best wedding dresses in the world.
I just cut and pasted that. I have no idea what it was. I don't remember. You kidding me? Stole that from People magazine. Give them credit.
I imagine you won't be going to any runway shows in Paris while you're there, but I saw you were at the Louvre. You saw Mona Lisa, or at least you saw the guy,
Yes.
the back of a guy's head taking a photo of the Mona Lisa.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
The Louvre. So the Louvre started out as a fortress, apparently, which I learned by waiting in line to get in, and it now is a fortress again. I mean, the thing is like serious lockdown. The security was just absolutely ridiculous to get through. You have to go through one security gate and another one, and that little pyramid thingy. I'm sure you've seen the Nick Cage movie. What was that? The
National Treasure?
National, that's the one with the Declaration of Independence. And the other
Isn't
anyway.
it National Treasure, I think? Yeah.
No, that's the other one. It was the one in Europe with I forget. Someone's screaming at the Da Vinci Code. Thank you. That's not Nick Cage.
No,
it's not. Yes,
no,
it is.
No.
You sure? Okay. Anyway,
this might be an edit, but I'm pretty sure that's not Nick Cage.
I'll do some live research while you talk about the Louvre.
It's Nick Cage. Anyway, that's not what I brought it up for. The point being that it was very hard to get into the Louvre. 8 million people around the Mona Lisa. Bit overrated, but the rest of the museum is fascinating. I mean, great. It's totally awesome. Yeah. But my favorite thing, I'm going to write about this later in the week. The jersiest place in Paris at the Olympics is the Arc de Triomphe, and not because of the Arc. The Arc is great, whatever. But because of the traffic circle around the Arc, it's freaking awesome. I mean, I could sit there and watch, these buses cut each other off. The guys riding bikes right through the middle of it. I mean, it is freaking crazy.
We need
That's
more.
amazing. One of the most iconic buildings in the world. Structures. Politi is talking about traffic and the Allies marching under the Arc in World War II to liberate Paris or anything like that. It's the traffic. It's Jersey, right? You can make it. Politi can spin anything.
The word you're looking for is tetrapylon, Pat. It's a tetrapylon. Okay.
Oh my
All right.
God.
Just keep that in mind. Look that up, folks.
To clarify, it was Tom Hanks and not Nicolas Cage in the Da Vinci Code.
Oh, Tom Hanks. That's close enough. Come on, right?
Close enough.
Give me some.
Great.
Did you do anything else fun in Paris, or it looked like you were in London too? Were you do anything fun on your
a little
tour?
family vacation in London. Just we stopped there. I stopped there with my family before I came down here. No, just getting started. I mean, I'm just wandering around. I know like the Olympics are a big logistics thing. So I had to take care of finding where the press center is, get my credential. I'll be at the opening ceremony, which is really exciting because there are limited tickets for that thing. So I had to get that settled all right. And then, now it's going to start. It'll just be the great thing about the Olympics, it's like the most important day of a person's life every single day. You cover this incredible thing for them, for their lives, and then wake up and do it again. So can't wait.
Obviously, we can't forget about Kahleah Copper, women's basketball, playing for Team USA, where they're going for their 7th straight gold, I think. An incredible team, obviously, and she'll be a big part of it.
Yeah, she's going to be a big part of it. And, it's kind of lost in all of the, craziness about Caitlin Clark not making the team, just how good the team is. It's just like ridiculous to think that you have to give them credit for what they've done, because as dominant as they've been, they win every year, they win every game. They've got a good system. They got a Jersey coach in Cheryl Reeve who's gonna say, and it's gonna be a situation where the moment they only win by 10 points, someone's gonna say, "Oh, okay, sorry, we're gonna jump on that moment." But Copper. This is her first Olympics. I think she's certainly earned it. She's going to be a glue player, I think, for the team. I don't know how many minutes she's going to get. We're going to find out soon. But that's something to watch because, clearly she deserves it.
Obviously, given the history, she's probably the most likely former Rutgers athlete to win a gold medal at the Olympics. Do you think there's any other that have a chance? Maybe Casey Murphy, obviously with the U.S. Women's National Team. Sebastian Rivera, I'm sure has a chance. Anybody else? Or that I think we've covered every Rutgers athlete, and I think I just
Rudy
said
Winkler, the Hammer.
Rudy.
Right. I don't think he's got a chance based on what I've read. I think the Hammer is kind of a Eastern European, Poland kind of dominated thing. I don't think he's got a chance to medal. Sebastian does. I mean, I think they feel pretty good that he's got an outside chance to medal. He obviously, when you finish, you get a silver medal at the World Championships. You come in with a lot of confidence. It depends on his draw, I think, in a lot of ways with that. But yeah, I would put Copper first. It'd be a stunning upset if the U.S. women did not win in basketball. It would not be an upset if the U.S. women did not win in soccer based on the last Olympics. I think they're probably the favorite, but they are no longer the prohibitive favorites they once were, and that's kind of what makes them more interesting. I don't know how much playing time Casey Murphy's going to get. I think it probably will rely on Alyssa Mahler there as the starter, but she certainly earned her spot, and if she does play, I think every bit of confidence that she'd be the elite goal that they need.
great stuff. I got nothing else on the Olympics, but we didn't ask for questions for this pod, but someone submitted a question anyway. And while we got you, Steve, this has nothing to do with football or any sports. I thought it was kind of interesting, though. It has to do with current events. And this is going to put you guys on the spot, so be prepared. Who would be the best Rutgers, New Jersey resident to be appointed to fill the empty United States Senate seat? Obviously, that Bob Menendez vacated after he resigned this week. It's got to be his argument. It's got to be Tyreme, right? He's unflappable in any situation. He's got the size and speed to play at the next level. And politically, Murphy can show South Jersey some love at a time where Murphy's need South Jersey to get back in the fold.
I think how could it not be Ron Harper? That's who I want to put. It's got to be a current player. It can be anybody from Rutgers.
No restriction on this
Senator
one.
Harper.
Could be anybody.
Yeah, that's what I think. Right?
I like that. I
mean, current athletes. Oh, I take that back. This is dumb that we didn't come up. Senator LeGrand, of course, is the correct answer to this. Can you imagine? How are you going to say no? Senator LeGrand is the correct answer to that, I think. Pat?
That's really good. I think it would be a fascinating politician, and if the new Republican Party could show us anything, it's that any sort of political outsider can make a historic rise to power. I'm going to throw out Nick Soriano as the ultimate power player, and a politician that would just make absolute headlines every day. It would be so amazing. I think that would be a real play.
Did he keep doing his daily gratitude lists? That would be the key to it. He would need to keep doing that from the White House. Yeah.
That would be a great political.
I like it.
Political guy in my eyes.
Yeah, you don't have one, Fonseca?
Well, that's definitely an unorthodox thinker in Nick Soriano. So I think that's a real good outside the box. I guess Kyle Monangai is like the easy pick. He's very popular these days, so he'd gather a lot of votes for local New Jersey residents, and he's a surefire pick. Kind of overcomes adversity, and there will be a lot of adversity, as we know, in politics. So I think he'd be tough-minded. He'd be resilient. And he, again, is a popular guy, which matters in these things if you're going to try to get votes. So I'll go with Kyle Monangai, which is the easy pick. And I realized I got a cop-out answer. You guys were much more creative, so I applaud you guys.
Monangai's an easy choice. That's great. That's fantastic. He's so sharp. He's well-spoken, thinks about his answers. A really fine representative of this football team for sure.
All right, that's all I got. Anything else, Steve, from Paris? I imagine we won't talk to you again until you come back.
That's it, man. I don't know. I'll keep you posted. Looking forward to getting it started. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. But it's time for some swimming, for crying out loud. The good thing about it, this is true. Like the one thing I would do, like the swimming races are like 54 seconds long. Like when Sydney McLaughlin runs, it's 50. So like you get there, like none of this is covering the Rutgers game where the game's 4 hours and you sit on River Road for an hour and a half. No. You just get there. You sit down, the race is over. It's good. They love it. It's brilliant. We need more of that. That'd be my platform.
I look forward to you being in the Warblin Center next winter to watch the Rutgers women's swimming and diving team and covering every event, because at least you'll be in and out.
That's true. That's a good point. It's a good point. All right, fellas. Hey, thanks for having me on. You enjoy. I'll see you at the end of camp.
I'll see you. We'll look forward to talking to you then, and we'll see everyone else soon for our training camp preview coming out next week. Look for that in your inboxes soon. And football has arrived, and I'm sure I can speak for all of us and say we're very excited to have actual things to talk about. We'll talk to you guys all soon. Later.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.